Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ruby. I'm sure this is going to be fun. Just for those that joined in a little later, I'd like to take a moment to read out the description of this workshop. So this is a workshop for the spoken word or writing. In this, you will learn the fundamentals of writing poetry or rap lyrics, the approach to storytelling, and understanding the history and social activism of spoken word and rap. The workshop will be interactive and open to all levels of experience, especially beginners. And now to introduce Ruby Ibarra. Here's a brief bio of her. Ruby Ibarra was born in the Philippines and spent the first 4 years of her life in Tacloban City before her family eventually settled in San Lorenzo, California. As a teenager, Ruby began crafting her own rhymes until she began to develop her own style and became comfortable with sharing her story. Currently, she's a scientist at a Bay Area biotech company working in the quality control department on COVID-19 test kits and, yes, even a vaccine. Ruby is also an up and coming hip hop artist performing sold out shows with her band of eight, the Balikbayans. Welcome to this workshop once again, and thank you for participating.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you again for joining us on this morning from the keynote and now the workshop. I'm very happy that you all are here. So to begin, I'd like for us to do an icebreaker and get to know one another, just to loosen up. And of course, like I don't want this workshop to be, like a traditional class where there's going to be a quiz at the end, or is there going to be a quiz? No, I'm just kidding. There's no quiz. We're just here to have fun and to learn together. So if we can move forward to the next slide, please. So for this icebreaker, I just want to quickly go around, and if we could all share your name, your grade or your age, your favorite food. This can be your favorite food of all time, or maybe your favorite food that you've been eating during this quarantine, and your favorite poet, rapper, singer, musician, or song. Because I'm just curious to hear what you guys are all listening and reading. So I guess let's kind of go one by one. I think Roger is first at the top of my timeline, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. My name is Roger Mupas. I'm a middle school teacher at Rancho Milpitas Middle School. And first of all, I just want to say thanks to my students for being here. And I also want to say thank you to you for inspiring, because I also have a 2-year-old daughter now, and I'm always thinking about how she's going to grow up, and what she's going to see and stuff like that. My favorite food, I would say right now, is peanut butter. My students know that because they see me eating that all the time. And favorite poet, rapper, singing, I guess growing up, the rap group that really influenced me and actually led me into learning more about history was Public Enemy. So, and the rapper Chuck D. Yeah. Okay.
Those are great answers. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Madhvi?
Oh my God. Okay. um, my name is Madhvi Gupta, and I have two kids. One is a high schooler, he's sophomore, and my daughter, she's the younger one. She's in junior high, seventh grader. My favorite food is milkshakes. Can't say no to one. And chocolate, of course.
Yum.
And my favorite poet, rapper, singer. You know what? It's been a while since I heard rap songs, but I just heard what Ruby did, and so Ruby, that's you. Thank you,
You
thank
get
you.
an A in this workshop. The next person, let's go with A. Kim.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I'm in 7th grade. My favorite food is a spicy rice cake called tteokbokki, and my favorite rapper is Inchen. It's a Korean rapper.
That's awesome. I love tteokbokki, by the way. I'm going to H Mart tomorrow to get some more food. Let's go with, it says WS10 Bonye. Please let me know how to say your name.
Well, my first name is Brianna. My last name Tupac or Juice World.
Yeah, I love Tupac and Juice WRLD's music. I don't think I caught the favorite food. It kind of muted. What did you say for your favorite food?
All red sauce food like spaghetti.
Yes, Team Red Sauce. Okay, let's continue. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've been numbering. I added numbers to the beginning of your names as well. This is for our exercise later. So let's go with number 4, T. Brandon.
So my name is Taj Brandon. I'm in third grade and I'm 8 years old. My favorite food is spaghetti and meatballs.
Yes.
And um, I like the song Eat Them Apples, like hyperspace. It's like
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And then let's go with number 6, Andrea.
My name is Andrea and I'm in 7th grade. And my favorite food is sushi. And my favorite rapper is Juice WRLD.
Juice WRLD. We have a lot of Juice WRLD fans here for sure. He was an amazing artist. Um, I'm not sure if anyone else wanted to participate. No pressure for, I know we have a tech person here and then F Chan, but if you guys wanted to share, please feel free.
Well, hi everyone. My name's Abby. I'm supporting in tech, so if you need any help, please put in the chat. I'm also Team Spaghetti and Meatballs, so I'm really excited that there are others here who enjoy that too. I think my most recent favorite musician will probably have to be Lizzo.
I love Lizzo too. She's definitely one of those artists or writers also who's 100% confident in their skin, and that's what I love about her. So we can continue. If we can please proceed to the next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, this workshop this morning is going to be interactive, but I do want to stress that there's no pressure. We're all here to learn together. I know that we all have varying experiences with writing, especially when it comes to poetry. I know for me, when I first started writing and when we started that poetry unit in my elementary school when I was in the 5th grade, I was so nervous. I was so shy. I had no idea how to even start writing my own poem. And I was even shy to recite, this poem that I had memorized. So I do understand that, we have different levels of comfort when it comes to especially sharing our own writing. So I do want to say that there's also no pressure if you don't want to share something out loud that we create later this morning throughout this workshop. Ground rule number 2 is to please actively listen. And I want to also stress that everyone will have a turn if you want to speak during this workshop. We'll make sure that everyone gets a turn to be able to be on the mic. And of course, number 3, the most important one, is that this will be a safe space. And we have to make sure that, we respect each other's input, each other's feedback, thoughts, ideas, and creativity. And is everyone good with those ground rules? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So as you all know, this workshop is centered on spoken word or poetry. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term spoken word is pretty much performance poetry. And this type of poetry evolved in the 1980s, and it came with the rise of slam poetry. So slam poetry is pretty much competitive poetry. For those of you who are familiar with hip hop and rap, in the genre of rap, there's also these things called rap battles where you have one rapper go up against another rapper, and they basically trade off verses. Like one will say something about the other person, and that's pretty much how slam poetry is. To kind of break it down in more a simpler definition, where you have a group of poets go up on stage one by one, and each of them, they're not battling each other in the traditional sense, but they're each reciting their own poem, and there are judges at these slam poetry events, and they get judged from a score of 0 to 10 points, and that's how the competitive nature comes to play. So in the United States, rap and battle raps they influenced these poetry slams. And so spoken word is definitely heavily focused on the writing just as much as it is on the performance. And I think that spoken word is distinct or different from, just a traditional poetry, in that there is a great importance on the delivery when a poet performs the poem, and that importance of also evoking the emotion. And can we move on to the next slide? So applying it to the community. A lot of the topics that are generally covered amongst spoken word artists is that they tend to reflect or write about politics, injustices, race, gender, among other things. And a lot of them use spoken word poetry to talk about their experiences, to reflect on how they feel, and even to provide a description of how they view the world. And that, to me, those things are the reason why I became a fan of spoken word, and also why I wanted to become a spoken word poet myself, is that I felt like I wanted to write about a lot of things that were going on in my life, and I was only able to communicate that through poetry. And this shows that spoken word is accessible and is a great platform to raise awareness on issues, and importantly, to tell the stories of those who are usually silenced in society. And can we move to the next slide? So when it comes to spoken word, there's different ways that you can write your lines in the poem. And today we're going to go through a list of some literary techniques that you can apply if you're interested in writing your own poem. So one of the literary techniques that I've used in the past when I write my poetry is called repetition. So what repetition means is when you repeat a word or a line for emphasis. Whether it's a single word or you're repeating the same line over and over again. Again, that's used to emphasize something, to really get your point across. So some examples that I've brought up from some songs that I'm familiar with that use repetition is, one song is this track called Diamonds by Rihanna. So in the song, she goes, shine bright like a diamond, shine bright like a diamond. And she says that multiple times to really, to emphasize the message that she's trying to get across. And the other example of repetition is from the song All Right by Kendrick Lamar, where he goes, we gon' be all right, so we gon' be all right. And that also is, so as you all know, as you listen to hip hop, a lot of rappers use repetition frequently in their lyrics, not just for emphasis, but I think to kind of create a chant. So as you include repetition in your poetry, I think these are the lines that people tend to remember after listening to it, because one, you've said it multiple times throughout the poem, but second, I think it really helps people memorize. If you say it multiple times, it really sticks in someone's mind, and again, that helps gets your message across. So let's move on to the next technique. So the other literary technique, which I think is the most commonly known and most popular one, and as we all know, as being, fans of artists like Lizzo and Juice WRLD, is rhyme. So the definition of rhyme is pretty much when words sound the same. So for example, cat, bat, hat, mat, pat, sat, rat. Those words all end with the sound at. And if we can move to the next slide. So when it comes to rhyme, there's also specific, I don't know if you guys are familiar or are aware, but there's also specific types of rhyme. The first kind of rhyme is called end rhyme. And so this is when the words at the end of each line sound the same, only the very last word. So in this example by a poem by E. E. Cummings, for whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find at sea. So here, the end rhyme is the words me and see, which are at the end of each line. And if we can move to the next slide. And now we also have something called internal rhyme. So this is when words at the when words not only at the end of each line, but words inside the lines also rhyme. So in this example, I went to town and took my car. I looked around and wasn't far. Can someone point out which words here are the internal rhymes?
Go ahead, feel free to speak up. We have young students.
Far and far.
Yes, I heard someone say car and far. Thank you.
Yep, that's correct. What else are the other rhyme words in this?
Town and around.
Yep, perfect. So you got it. So as you all see with internal rhyme, it's not just the words at the end, but also inside the town and around, the car and far. And I encourage all of you after today to, whenever you listen to the next rap song, a lot of rappers do this in their lyrics where it's not just at the end, especially when it comes to artists like J. Cole or Kendrick Lamar. They do this a lot of times in their songs. And can we move on to the next slide? Now, even beyond an end rhyme or an internal rhyme, we have multisyllabic rhyme. And this is when words at the end of each line sound the same, but also it's words throughout the stanza or throughout the verse. So anybody here familiar with the Hamilton play? If anyone caught it on Disney Plus? Yes. As we all know, the Hamilton Broadway play, which is by Lin-Manuel Miranda, there's a lot of, the whole play is pretty much in rhyme. They're basically rapping the whole play. And what I loved about Hamilton in particular is that they're big on multisyllabic rhyme. For example, I'll read this right now. This is from the cabinet battle in one of the scenes. It goes, Thomas Jefferson, always hesitant with the president, reticent. There isn't a plan he doesn't jettison. Madison, you mad as a Hatterson, take your medicine. You're in worse shape than the national debt is in. So as we see, as I've highlighted, the words Jefferson, I forgot to highlight hesitant also rhymes. Jefferson, hesitant, president, resident, jettison, Madison, Hatterson, medicine, dedison. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 rhymes in that whole short stanza. And that also is something that you can use when you write your poetry, or if you decide to write a song, is multisyllabic rhyme. And I think the great thing about multisyllabic rhyme is that to the ears, it just sounds super cool. It makes it sound like, you know, you need to listen to it again, because oftentimes I think a lot of listeners don't catch all of the rhymes at the same time. And I think that makes it even better or interesting for people who are reading or listening to your poems. And again, a lot of rappers that that all of us are familiar with use this all the time. I think one artist that comes to mind who always does multisyllabic rhyme is Eminem. For sure, he does this all the time. Can we move on to the next slide? So another literary technique is called irony. And so this is using language that is really the opposite. And this is usually used for humor or emphasis. So the examples that we have for irony is the fire station burned down. The pilot had a fear of heights. So looking at those 2 lines, it's a fire station. It's supposed to take out fire, but it burned down. So that's the irony there. And a pilot is supposed to, you know, drive a plane, but he has a fear of heights. So that's also the irony there. And I think a lot of songwriters, especially singers, usually use these literary techniques to really put an emphasis on what they're saying to make that contrast. And I think I've heard artists like Ariana Grande and Adele use these in their songs. And can we check out the next slide? So the next literary technique to me that I think is one of the most important ones is imagery. So imagery means being visually descriptive language or using visually descriptive language. So this is show, not tell. This is you basically painting a picture in the listener's mind so that they can only imagine, they can smell, they can taste, they can feel the words and the story that you're talking about. So the examples that I have here for imagery, the first one is the sunset was beautiful as the clouds were edged with pink and gold. So just that sentence alone, talking about the sunset and hearing the description of the clouds, you can already imagine and you can really vividly see that description in your head. The next one is the familiar tang of my grandmother's cranberry sauce reminded me of my warm summers as a child. That's also very descriptive language. So I think when you're writing poetry as you experiment, as we experiment today, and if you choose to write poetry after today's session, it's really good to be as descriptive as possible when you're writing, because that really paints the pictures in the listener's head. So the next literary technique is metaphor. Again, this is used in a lot of rap songs. Metaphor, what that means is it's a comparison that implies that one object is like another. So the examples is, she is a shining star. Her hair was a flowing golden river. The snow is a white blanket. So it's called a metaphor because it's not literal. She is a shining star. A human being is not a star, but you describing that person like a star helps, again, paint that picture in someone's head. Her hair was a flowing golden river. Your hair is not a river. Those are two different things. But by describing it to be like a flowing golden river, helps paint that picture again in someone's head. So that's what metaphor is. If you can go to the next one. So similar to metaphor is simile. So you're comparing two things that aren't like the other, but this time the difference between simile and metaphor is when you use a simile, you use the words like or as. So for example, she was as brave as a lion. They fought like cats and dogs. Watching this movie was like watching grass grow. And that also helps to paint the picture in your head. For example, the last line, watching this movie was like watching a grass grow. We know that watching a grass grow means that it takes forever. You're going to be sitting there pretty much for days on end, maybe months, just to see the grass finally grow. And that helps emphasize how boring the movie that you were watching was, to compare it to watching grass grow. And she was as brave as a lion. That also helps paint the picture in your head that not only she was brave, but to compare her to a lion, I think that adds a different dimension and really puts the emphasis. And one of the last literary techniques that I want to share is alliteration. So alliteration is when several words have a repeating consonant or vowel. So I think pretty much it's when a line kind of sounds like a tongue twister. So for example, we have Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So in that example, if you all notice, all of those words start with the letter P. The next one is sheep should sleep in a shed. All of those words start with the letter S. And then another example is the song DNA by the rapper Kendrick Lamar. I got power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA. The power, poison, pain are the alliteration. All those words start with the same letter. And I think when it comes to alliteration, whether you're writing a poem or listening to a rap song, what it helps bring is not only emphasis on your words, but also it helps with the flow as well. I think it makes it more interesting to the person listening to the songs, because it starts sounding like all of the words sound the same. Like for example, if you hear that Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, it's more interesting and I think a lot more dynamic to listen to. And if you can go to our last literary device. So our next literary technique is called personification. And the definition of personification is when you give human traits and qualities to objects or non-human beings. So for example, the first one is the leaves waved in the wind, or lightning danced across the sky. The wind howled in the night. Those are all very descriptive. And the personification here is that obviously leaves don't have hands, so they can't wave. But to hear that description, the leaves waved in the wind, that to me paints a picture of leaves like really moving back and forth, like really fast and brushing up against one another. And the wind howled at night also paints a picture in my head. So if we can move to the next slide. So far, by the way, does anyone have any questions or need any clarifications on the techniques that we talked about? Or give me a thumbs up if everything is good. Okay, so I want to share a few poems before we start with our writing practice. This first example is this poem called The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And this is by a poet rapper named Tupac. Is anybody want to volunteer to read this poem?
Awesome. Go ahead. You're on mute, honey. Could you please go ahead and unmute you? Thank you.
Thank you, Taj.
Hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete. Proving nature's law is wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny it's sleeping at streams that learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else.
Perfect. So as we read along with that poem, does anyone know what literary techniques Tupac used in writing this? What are the techniques that we talked about earlier that we can identify in this poem?
There's personification.
Personification, that's correct.
The end rhyme thing.
The end rhyme. So we have concrete, feet, cared, air, and the personification too, the learning to walk without having feet. So it's this rose that is evolving and growing and becoming this bigger person that's blossoming. And what Tupac basically did is he was comparing himself to a rose that grew in concrete. Any others that we identify? For me, I also see imagery. I think the, the the description of a rose growing from a crack in the concrete already vividly paints a picture in my mind. And then also the irony, I think, because we've never seen a rose grow from concrete. It's usually roses and plants, they grow in soil. But for Tupac to have described a rose growing from concrete, for me, as someone who's reading this poem, it tells me that, there's emphasis in that Tupac himself was the rose that grew from that concrete. And he basically defied all odds and he ended up blossoming into the person that he became. And then we have another poem, if we can move to the next slide. So this one is by a poet named Gwendolyn Brooks, and it's called We Real Cool. Can we get another volunteer to read this one?
We have a volunteer, number 5. Please, can we go unmute him?
The pool players 7 at Golden Shovel. We real cool. We left school. We work late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We then gin. We jazz June and we die soon.
Perfect. Thank you for reading that. What are the literary techniques we identify here?
Rhyme.
Rhyme. Yes, that's correct.
Also, it seems like the internal rhyme, if I'm correct, right?
Oh yeah, specifically there's also internal rhyme. So as we see, sing, sin, thin, gin, it's more than one word that rhymes. So that also can also be multisyllabic rhyme. So this one is a little bit more of an, I guess, like an open-ended poem, not too descriptive. But I think the power in these kinds of poems is that it really allows your reader to have a different perspective on it and to come into conclusion on their own terms of how they perceive the writing, and that can be really powerful as well. And if we can move to the next slide.
Ruby, I just want to mention one of the participants raised their hand.
Oh.
Yeah, Kim. Last.
For the we strike straight, is that a metaphor?
We strike straight. I think it is. Yeah, good. That's a good eye. Thank you for catching that. Great job, everyone. Thank you for seeing and applying how these literary techniques come to play in the poetry that we've been reading. I just want to share one more text example. This is from one of my favorite poets, Maya Angelou, and this is called Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines, digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise, up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Very powerful poem. For those of you who aren't familiar with Maya Angelou, please check out her work. Taj?
There's rhyme, like pain, like, yeah.
Yep, that's correct.
There's repetition.
Repetition, that's perfect. Yeah, the repeating I rise, still I'll rise. By the end of the poem, after hearing I rise, it makes me feel like I also want to rise, and it empowers me. So that, again, I want to stress the importance of repetition in your writing, because this is what you can potentially come across when you include repetition in your writing, is really putting that emphasis there.
We have F. Jen who's raised her hand.
There's also similes in this poem.
Similes, perfect. Yep, that's correct. But still, like air, I'll rise. They use the word like. So far we've said rhyme, repetition, simile. I think in this one there's also imagery and even metaphor. The line that goes, I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, comparing herself to an ocean, and just the vastness of water. So great job, everyone. I'm so glad that we have people thinking critically this morning, and you guys have done such a great job in applying the literary techniques that we've been learning about. So if we can move on to the next slide. So when it comes to performance, as I mentioned earlier, spoken word is not just about writing, but it's also about performing. When a poet is on stage, they use these techniques, and some of the techniques that poets often use are rhythm and pace. So depending how fast or slow you're reading a line, melody, volume, pitch or tone, gestures, eye contact, and props. And if we can go to the next slide. So I want to share quickly a few of my favorite spoken word poets that I've seen online. So if we can go ahead and play this first one. This is by a poet named Joshua Bennett, and this one is called Tamara's Opus.
You need to reshare because I don't think I shared with sound.
Tamara has never listened to hip-hop, never danced to the rhythm of raindrops or fallen asleep to a chorus of chirping crickets. She has been deaf for as long as I've been alive. And ever since the day I first turned 5, my father has said, Joshua, nothing is wrong with Tamara. God just makes some people different. And at that moment, those 9 letters felt like hammers, swung gracefully by unholy hands to shatter my stained glass innocence into shards that can never be pieced back together or do anything more than sever the ties between my sister and I. I waited, was patient numberless years, anticipating the second her ears would open like lotuses and allow my sunlight senses to seep into her insides, make her remember all of those conversations we must have had in heaven back when God handpicked us to be sibling souls centuries ago. I still remember her 20th birthday. Readily recall my awestruck 11-year-old eyes as I watch deaf men and women of all ages dance in unison to the vibrations of speakers booming so loud that I imagine angels chastising us for disturbing their worship with such beautiful blasphemy. Until you have seen a deaf girl dance, you know nothing of passion. There was a barricade between us that I never took the time to destroy. Never for even a moment thought to pick up a book and look up the sign for sister, for family, for goodbye. I will see you again someday. Remember the face of your little brother. It is only now I see that I was never willing to put in the extra effort to love her properly. So as the only person in my family who is not fluent in sign language, I've decided to take this time to apologize to Mara. I am sorry for my silence, but true love knows no frequency. And so I will use these hands to speak volumes that can never be contained within the boundaries of sound waves. I will shout at the top of my fingertips until digits dance and relay these mental messages directly to your soul. I know that there is no poem that can make up for all the time we have lost. So please, if you can, just listen. Thank you.
So that was by one of my favorite poets. He's such a brilliant writer named Joshua Bennett. What literary or performance techniques did you guys notice in that one?
He used gestures.
Gestures, that's correct.
His tone and his volume.
That's correct as well.
Definitely the rhythm and pace. He played around a lot with that, so that was beautiful.
Yeah, he definitely utilized rhythm and pace too. When things got a little bit more intense, he would speed up the delivery, and then when he wanted to emphasize something, he would slow down, like the listen part. But definitely, I think you guys have all captured all of it. And when it comes to writing, he also used imagery and personification. So that poem was about him and how he communicates with his sister, who is deaf. Can we share the next video? So this next video is by a poet named Taylor Mali, and it's called What Teachers Make. So this is his kind of tribute to teachers.
Called What Teachers Make, or Objection Overruled, or If Things Don't Work Out, You Can Always Go to Law School. He says the problem with teachers is, what's a kid going to learn from someone who decided that his best option in life was to become a teacher? He reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teachers, those who can do and those who can't teach. I decide to bite my tongue instead of his, and resist the urge to remind the other dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers, because we're eating after all, and this is supposed to be polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher, Taylor. Come on, be honest. What do you make? And I wish he hadn't done that. Asked me to be honest. Because you see, I have this little policy in my classroom about honesty and ass-kicking, which is, if you ask for it, then I have to let you have it. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and I can make an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best? I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute. No, you may not work in groups. No, you cannot ask me a question. Why won't I let you go to the bathroom? Because you're bored and you don't really have to go to the bathroom, do you? I make parents tremble in fear when I call home at around dinner time. Hi, this is Mr. Molly. Hope I haven't called at a bad time. I just wanted to talk to you about something that your son said today in class. To the biggest bully in the grade, he said, leave that kid alone. I still cry sometimes, don't you? And that was the noblest act of courage that I have ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they are and who they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write. And then I make them read. I make them spell. Definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, until they will never misspell either one of those words again. I make them show all their work in math class and then hide it on their final drafts in English. I make them realize that if you've got this, then you follow this. And if somebody ever tries to judge you based on what you make, you give them this. Here, let me break it down for you so you know what I say is true. Teachers make a goddamn difference. Now what about you?
And definitely shout out to all our educators out there who make a difference in our lives. With that performance, what kind of literary techniques did you guys notice?
His hand gestures.
Definitely the hand gestures.
He also used volume.
Volume, yes, that's correct.
The rhythm and pace.
The rhythm and the pace.
We made eye contact.
Yep. And how about when it came to writing?
Repetitive.
Yes. So as we all see, you know, these poets that we've watched so far, even the texts that we've read, a lot of them apply a lot of the literary techniques that we've gone through this morning. And so I think we're almost out of time, but I want to keep it moving. If we can go to our first warm-up exercise. As you've all noticed, as you entered in this room, I added a number next to your name. So with your number, if you have an odd number next to your name, I need you to, with your pen and paper or open up a notepad on your computer, write 5 statements that start with the word if. For example, if the sky were orange, if I had pizza, if we played Fortnite, it doesn't matter what the words are, just whatever comes to your mind. So if you have an odd number, for example, like 1, 3, 5, 7, you have to make 5 sentences that start with the word if. And if you have an even number next to your name, write 5 sentences that start with the word then. For example, then we went to the mall, then I was a millionaire, then we danced on TikTok. So does that sound clear? Does anyone need any clarification, or everyone good? Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll give you guys around 3 to 5 minutes. Just write 5 sentences based on the name that you, or the number that you have next to your name. And feel free to incorporate the literary techniques that we talked about, but there's no pressure. This can just be for fun. This is just a warm up.
Also, because we want to make the most of the time that we have left, if any of you is ready, just go ahead and raise your hand whenever you're done. We have participant number 1 that has raised their hand. And go ahead and speak up.
So I'll give you guys maybe two more minutes, and then we'll check back.
I'm done.
We have participants 1 and 4 that have completed. And 6, I see that in the chat. While we are doing this exercise, I want to thank each one of you for being here. And I also want to give you a heads up that at the end of the workshop, there will be a link to a survey that'll be posted in chat. So please go ahead and take a minute to complete the survey for us. And in case we kind of get teleported to the main room, the link to the survey will be posted in the main room as well. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I see that our tech host has gone ahead and put in the link to the survey. Please go ahead and fill that. Those that are done, I think this would be a great time to make a note of that link. Thank you all. I just got a notification that we have 1 minute left to be transported back to the main room.
Oh no, so soon. So we have is everybody done? Can we start with 3 and 4? So if you guys can take turns. For example, Akim, if you start with one line if, and then Taj will continue with then, just one by one, if that makes sense. If you both can unmute yourselves, and let's see what you came up with together.
If I lived in New York,
Then me and my brother played.
if it had snowed in SoCal,
Then I walked to my birthday.
if we had tried harder,
Then I did my homework.
if the time had stopped,
Then I typed notes.
if they failed their class,
Then I made a sticky note.
Oh my gosh, it's like you guys knew that you'd be collaborating with each other, but that worked out perfectly. But I see that they did give us, unfortunately, we ran out of time. I was hoping to go through everybody, but thank you all so much for being so engaged and so active in this workshop. I hope you at least learned one new thing today. Again, if you're interested in poetry and writing, please check out youthspeaks.org. They're a great resource for young writers and creatives, and definitely think more critically the next time you listen to a poem or you listen to a rap song, because a lot of these writers that we love and that we admire use these techniques in their writing. And for those of you who are interested in writing your own poetry too, please feel confident